Hello, everybody. This is a live stream, so I don't have to upload a video to YT because this is going to be a pretty long video, I think. Um, this goes out to the groups that I mentioned in the title: Magtow, Taylor the Fiend, great guy, Manosphere, and the women that they discuss. And I see a lot of women's videos on TikTok, which are, you know, a product of the direction our culture went in. Now, I'm not putting the blame and I'm not defending any of these parties and I'm not talking bad about them. I want them to look at something that they haven't looked at that factors in to what they do talk about. You got to broaden it a little bit, and I want them to take all their arguments. I'm not going to disclude them, but we all know. I want you to take those and set them aside for a moment. And if you need, get a pen and piece of paper because you might want to jot down certain things that I talk about if you want to research what I talk about, whatever this is or that is, whatever I discuss. I encourage you to, because I want you to test out the validity of what I give you, a piece of history. Well, it's not a piece, it's a lot of history. You want to logically go back in our history and find out and put your finger on what led us up to this point. And it's the core to a lot of things that happened to us. When I say us, I'm discussing the Western culture, Western Europe, North America, Japan, Australia, what a lot of people call the West. Okay, a lot of people that we would consider foreign would call us. I want you to write these things down and go ahead, test my validity, because I'm not going to give you a bunch of false information and a bunch of crap, and I can care less about content. I do like YT. I wish I, could help people out. I get entertainment, but I made a lot of friends from it, and I'm hoping that what I say here can help you. I want you to broaden it a little bit, and just take the foolishness and the little things. Even you ladies, put them to the side for a minute. Now, ladies, I'm not defending you, but I'm also not going to bash you either, because possibly had this cultural shift that happened that a lot of people weren't aware of had not happened, you may not be acting the way you are. A lot of people today, they act out the way the culture is, the popularity, and a lot of other things. Okay, put that to the side for a moment, and I'm going to get to it. We're going to start in our history right after World War II. My parents, my dad was born in 43, my mom was born in 45. Just before the baby boom generation, but I do consider them a part of it because they acted like it. Okay. Now every generation coming down, there's a problem with these kids. They don't want to work. They don't want to do it. No. They're just acting what the culture gave them, and where they were born into, and what they were exposed to. That's why people that are old act differently than the other generations. You got to come to that understanding. Now, when you looked at the family unit, I'm talking about mom, dad, and however many children you had. From after the World War II, we had the boom generation, 1940, middle of the 1940s, the 50s and 60s, which was the love generation, where the boomers started to become adults. When they went to college, they were getting out of college or whatever. You had TV programs like Leave It to Beaver. Late 60s came the Brady Bunch. You had a lot of TV programs, because TV was new then. Nice mom, nice daddy. The kids were well educated. They went to school. The dad worked the mom stayed home. Okay? That was the traditional family up until a certain point in our history. Now, in our country, from 1980 back in our history, from that point, we were all raised to believe and accept without question that the next generation is going to live better and not struggle as badly as we did. They're going to live better and we're going to provide for them better. Okay, you're talking about maybe 150 years back to 1980, wages rose. People made a good living after World War II. That was because of the New Deal of our president, FDR. Mom stayed home. Mom was the emotional part, raised the kids, did a good job. Dad was the iron fist that went out and worked and provided for the family. And he was able to do that. Buy a house, buy a car, white picket fence, the whole 9 yards, like it was in the 50s. En masse. Not everywhere, but en masse. The mass of people. But when 1979 came around, your corporate leaders stopped raising wages. They didn't have to, because it started in 1980 with two of my uncles and aunts that lost their job with AC Sparkplug in the GM plant in Flint, Michigan. In 1980, they all lost their jobs. That's when Detroit started to get destroyed because all the jobs in the auto industry and most of Michigan closed down the factories, put all these people out of work, and shipped those jobs into other countries. That is a part of it. A lot of people started to slowly lose their jobs, their good-paying jobs, and were left out. And some of those people did move to Baltimore, Maryland, and along the East Coast there, but then would shortly thereafter witness the same thing that happened in those areas, Detroit and Michigan. The Bethlehem Steel Company shut down and put massive people's amount out of work. Okay, in 1980, wages stopped rising. You go to the National Bureau of Economic Research, what your average American makes. I'm going to start with America because I'm an American. The average American, what that person earns and what it can buy them is the same as what it was in 1978. They can't get any more, not any less. Okay? But corporate profits went through the roof. It would have been nice to have some people in politics to tell the American people of the drubbing that was coming down the pike. Okay? So to mask this, that your man's wages aren't going to get any better, your standard of living is going to remain stagnant for the next 40 to 50 years, which it has. So what happened? To mask it, to keep up with the American dream, your next generation's going to live better, whatnot, blah, 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 all the BS I heard when growing up and watching Saturday morning cartoons and commercials that would say, support the United Negro College Fund, is when that all got started. Support these kids going to college. My two oldest sisters went to college. You want to know what it cost them? $200. Not, for a good, for a good major university, it cost them over $100,000 or more, and go 30 years in debt to pay that off. And lucky to have a job. Okay, let's put that to the side for the moment. Let's go back to that. In 1980, your wages were no longer going to rise. And in a stunning innovation, that was where the massive issuing of a credit card was created. But it started earlier than that. But the only people that had these, it was called the American Express card, were your traveling businessmen. But instead of raising workers' wages, they borrowed. And these employers took that extra money because the wages aren't going to go anywhere. And they said, look, invest it in this bank and we'll give it to your employees as credit and you can get interest off it instead of raising their wages. And everything's all hunky dory. Okay, that's fine. But there's a side effect to that, and it happened in 2008. It was a good ride for them, well over 30 years. Wages remained stagnant. People borrowed up the wazoo. All the moms, we're talking on massive millions of women, left the house as homemakers to join the workforce because their husband's wages was not going to keep up with the American dream. Now, before 1980, yeah, there were women that were in the workforce. Yes, there were, but not en masse like in 1980. It wasn't enough to keep up with the American dream to have the wife come out of the house and join the workforce. Now, granted, a lot of the feminists wanted it, blah, blah, blah. I don't care. But en masse, a lot of women came out of the house as homemakers and started and joined the workforce, but it wasn't enough. So the major issuing of a credit card came out and people got flooded full of debt. It was a good ride, but when your wages remain stagnant, a day will come when you don't have enough wealth to service the debt. And that's why we had a crash in 2008, because the whole cards collapsed and people couldn't afford it anymore. Yeah, there was the housing crisis. Yeah, there was the Lehman Brothers and all that. But they didn't tell you about this portion of it. And typically your media won't. Or they're paid not to discuss what I've just told you in the past 5 minutes. But that's what happened. Now, 1980, major massive amount of women came out of the house and joined the workforce. What kind of TV programming did we run into then? And it all started when I was in my latter years of high school, when The Simpsons came out. And then later on in the 90s, masses of amounts of programming, like South Park and a bunch of other programming and sitcoms. I can't name them all, but it started with The Simpsons as far as I can remember. How was that presented? You were presented with a husband and wife that couldn't stand each other. The kids are mouthing off and weren't behaving. Mom wasn't home to raise the kids and everything, and because she had to work, and so did Dad. You're presented with a dysfunctional family. They were just reflecting the cultural shift that we were going through. Now, granted, there were probably dysfunctional families throughout history, but not en masse like this. And people wonder why the kids were acting weird. I was one of these kids. It massively started in 1980. You've heard the term latchkey kid? A latchkey kid was this. You went to school. My dad was out on the road. He only came home on the weekends until the divorce. That's beside the point. My mom would go to work in the morning before we would, after we would go to school. And we didn't see Mom until like 5, 6 o'clock that night. All right? So there's no adults at the house. So when you got home from school, you had a key to unlock the door to get yourself in the house because nobody was home. And we managed, for the most part, watched ourselves, which some parents would be like, whoa, wait a minute. You need adult supervision with these teenage kids. Yeah, you do. We ran into issue. That's why some of us, at the beginning of our lives, we had Mom home. Yeah, I did. Until a certain point, and then she went back to work. But you got to understand, the raising of kids was a lot different to our grandparents, my parents, and the kids coming up that were born into the 1990s. They were going to be raised differently and not know of anything differently. A lot of them do, like the millennials, do not know of a generation that did not have any internet, and we didn't have cell phones. But let's go back to the women for a second. 1980, all these women go out to work, can work a 40-hour job, and couldn't keep up. All right, and then they had to come home. Depending on when they came home, they'd have to make dinner for the kids and try to maintain a household. That's like double duty for women. I know some women that could do it, but just put yourself in that woman's shoes for a moment, like my mother. Oh, yeah, my mom had an iron fist. You didn't get out of line because you knew you were going to get your ass whipped. And if you got lucky, you didn't get your ass whipped by my dad when he got home and found out about it. Because when it came to dad, you didn't get away with shit. And you knew this. And if you got out of line, mouthed off to mom, you got backhanded. You didn't have kids running off to the police. Oh, I'm being abused by my parents. Yeah, that didn't go on. Later on, it did. But you got to understand the cultural shift here. And in a way, en masse, for some that were most of these women that were forced out of the house to go join the workforce to keep up with the American dream. We're not feminists. A good chunk of them were not. I can't tell you and give you accurate numbers how many of those were. But I'm sure most of them were not feminists. But they lost their femininity in the time that they had to do all this. Now, answer me this question to the men. Oh, I'm hard on you guys because I'm hard on myself too. Because I've asked myself this question. Do you think, because when I was raised and I listened to the older boys growing up, they told me, if you want a girlfriend, you got to have a car, you got to have a job. You don't have either one of those, you ain't getting no girlfriend. It's the way it was. Because the older boys that I knew that had a car, had a job, they were taking out the girls. And I thought that was kind of cool. I'm like, oh, okay. And I'm glad that they told me that. I think it's somewhere in the late 90s that all ended. It didn't matter if you had a car or job. It seems to me that way. Today, some do, some don't, depending on, like Taylor the Fiend says, and I agree with him, it depends on if you're an attractive man or not. You're an attractive man, you're part of that 1 to 10%. Oh, yeah, you're in like Flint. Some ladies may not, but for the most part, you got it made. But your average man that ain't got a job, he ain't going nowhere. That's true. Well, at least that's what I was raised to believe. I went on that tangent and I lost my place here. Give me a minute. But in 1980 is when this cultural shift happened that a lot of people don't realize or learned it. So this isn't my study. This is me learning from National Bureau of Economic Research and putting all this together. This is also a big factor in our culture of what happened and why the mass of women act the way they do. Now, that's not an excuse. It does point to a very decisive factor in why the women act the way they do. Now, oh yeah, I got to ask you guys, do you think the way you are right now, you probably have a job? Great. It pays well? Great. Do you think that you could afford to sustain a woman that does not work, that does what a woman's supposed to do? Be at home, take care of the kids, blah, 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 and everything. Do you think on your income, you could do that? If you found the perfect woman that doesn't act like these modern day women, that, traditional woman, cleans, washes, does the dishes, does your laundry, keeps a clean, spotless house, which I know a lot of Filipinas do, a lot of Asian women do. Got to hand it to them. Different culture, though. You got a woman like that. Do you think that you can sustain that, you being the breadwinner by yourself? Ask yourself, could you do it on your own financially of what you do for a living? In this economy and the opportunities that are here in America, just so you know, National Bureau of Economic Research again. Do you realize it's gotten worse though? One college graduate, one out of 600 will get that good paying job that will keep them in the middle class or better. That's what their research does. They do this all the time. One out of 600 leaves a lot of people out, don't you think? The rest of them, doesn't matter what your degree is. You're lucky to find a job to be a barista at a Starbucks. Oh yeah, they're hiring all the time. My education, you look at it, say, you should be somewhere probably on Wall Street, or you should be some CEO or a person on the boards of directors of a major company. Yes, my education does that, but I really didn't want to go in that direction. But the direction I went, which you see right in front of you, is what my dad did. And education does help to do this job, but most of them aren't. A lot of them, back in my dad's day, were lucky to have a 7th to 8th grade education. However, it's what pays good. This job pays on your decision making and what you decide you want to do and what direction and what you can tolerate and what you're willing to sacrifice. Me, what do I sacrifice? Well, I missed out on my kids growing up, a lot of it. I missed out on a lot of what they did as kids. At times, I made it home to watch their cheerleading, their gymnastics, their football, baseball, their social activities, riding a horse. I made it home for a lot of that, yes, but not much. A lot of people that know me personally, I make it home maybe 3 or 4 times a year for a few days, if I'm lucky. Again, I will miss this Christmas also. Traditionally, I probably will not open my Christmas gifts until probably Easter, which has happened multiple times. I sacrifice me to be out here to keep these wheels running. I'm an owner operator. I get paid by the load, not by the mile, to make the kind of money to sustain and make sure that my kids have everything paid for and try to have every advantage possible. That is not spoiling them either. Their mother is in the medical field. When she had our last child, she wasn't working until she didn't go back to work until she went to kindergarten. And I believe my daughter's in the 1st grade now. But she when she went to kindergarten, that's when she went back to work. Was I able to sustain her and my family, my kids, at that time? Yes, I could do it. Yes. And I don't know what somebody can do, you guys, to be able to afford to do that. Because you ain't going to do it on minimum wage or a $20 an hour job. You're going to struggle. And you're going to be arguing, and that's what busts up the family unit and where it's dysfunctional. It all started massively in 1980. But not only that, a lot of our jobs were shut down, moved overseas for cheap foreign labor. And that happened in Detroit. most of Michigan. When you look at Detroit today, you ask yourself, what caused it? And who decided that? 40 people. 40 people out of 2.5 million that lived in that area at the time. 40 people on the boards of the directors of the three major auto companies decided that. You think you're going to be one of those kind of people? Like a lot of people thinking of the American dream, it's for real. You're going to be one of them. Don't hold your breath. That's why I learned economically. The mass of people in our economic system are required to live with the consequences of the decisions made by the corporate leaderships, decisions in which you and I are excluded legally and in practice, de jure and de facto. Whatever else you call that system, it is not democratic, which we Americans have a fetish about living in a democratic society. See how I'm trying to get you people to think, look deeper than these foolish ideas? Sure, they're creditable, but this one's more creditable of the source. If we men could provide for our women and have the opportunity in a capitalist system, we need to have a job that pays that. And we can't obtain it. What do? Sit around and blame ourselves? Yes, that's what we do. And it leads to alcoholism and suicide. Look that one up too. But very rarely are you going to be able to find a man that can sustain a wife and children on their own, being the source of sole income. It's not going to happen, dude. I'm lucky I'm able to do it. But look what I sacrificed for it. Not every man can do that, can be away from their family. That's why I'm not blaming women for their actions of the way they act today, modern women. Mostly, yes, because they have a brain and a lot of them go to college and get educated, yes. But they should come to this conclusion somewhere and really think of what the hell's going on and look at the big picture instead of these little foolish arguments, which sooner or later turn into be bigger issues, it seems. But had that not happened, where the mass of women had to come out of the house and become working people because the man can't make money enough in the capitalist system to sustain a family. There is an answer. And it's not old and it's not something new. It's been around a long time. And there are a lot of people doing it right now, including here in the United States. Minnesota, western Wisconsin, and western Iowa. Iowa is really exploding when it comes to this. They're throwing capitalism away. And they're doing it in a different way. Not capitalism, a different economic system. But they're not going to tell you about it because most Americans do not want to hear this and don't want to hear it. But it's our future. And the longer we hang on to this dead economic system, look where it's taking us. Do you want to try something different? Do you want to do something better? Because the human race can always do better. I mean, you look at our past, the decisions we made, well, that was a better decision, ending slavery and giving people rights. Yeah, that was a good decision. It makes us more humane in a way. Okay? We can do better than our current economic system. And what is that? It's called worker cooperatives, meaning just like a lot of you guys want to understand this, look at the Green Bay Packers football team. It's one of the only professional teams that could never be sold or moved. Why? Because it's community owned. You go to Green Bay, Lambeau Field, been there many a times. You look, well, where's Green Bay at? All I see is trees and the facade of Lambeau Field. Yeah, you're in Green Bay. There are no skyscrapers and buildings and all that other stuff. Oh, there's buildings, but you just can't see them. Around Lambeau is a lot of warehousing that I deliver to, and they're all worker cooperatives. Now, what's a worker co-op? A worker co-op is this: there are no boards of directors and major shareholders, and there is no owner. It's community owned, and decisions are made democratically. They're not like Amazon, where you got thousands of people working at this warehouse, creating a surplus for one person like Jeffrey Bezos and who's that other guy? Elon Musk, who's got billions of dollars for doing nothing. They live off the surplus that thousands, if not millions, of employees that create for them. That's how they live that style. Because everybody asks the question, what do you got to do? How hard do you got to work to make that $200 billion a year? Easy. You get millions of foolish people to work for you to give you the surplus. Because that's what happens. Employer comes around. We never ask how they got it. It's either you got it or you don't. And you bring whatever it is you got, 100 or whatever it is, and the employees come in and add value to whatever it is that they're making, whether like it's furniture, okay? And the value added by the employee is another 100. So you got the total of 200 when you sell it. Now, out of that 200, the employer wants that $100 bills to get what he laid out. What does 100? Now, the employees added labor to create that. So, they should get the 100, but do they get it? No, they don't. Not in a capitalist system. They divide that. And I'll be generous and say 50. You got to pay the workers or the game is over. But do the employees get the value added of the total labor that what they produced? No, they don't. You make a surplus for the employer. And what you just learned here, a lot of Americans had this dream that when they graduate college or high school, that they'll never work for somebody that doesn't pay them what they're worth. Never going to happen. That's never happened, and it never will. That statement to yourself, to the Americans that say that, is having to deal with the economic system in which they live. And I feel for them. Could I be a capitalist? Sure, I can. I can buy some trucks, throw 3 or 4 drivers in it, and live off the surplus that they create for me. But no, I won't do that. Why? Because I'm a Christian, and it leaves a bad taste in my mouth. And no, I have virtue, and I won't do that. I could, but I won't. Go ask somebody of the cloth and the Christian faith, and ask them honestly, especially a Roman priest or a bishop, cardinal, all the way up to the Pope. Ask them, is capitalism evil? Yeah. Well, when I was in Italy, the cardinal said, "See, yes, it's evil." And I asked him why. Because it exploits the mass of people for the so few. Now, you go to the Bureau of Economic Research. We almost have 8 billion people on this planet. And out of that 8 billion, 42 of the richest human beings on this planet have more wealth than the bottom 60%. 42. Get your head wrapped around that. Out of 8 billion. Which of you has a moral, ethical, or religious values to such a system? Ask yourself that question. But this goes along with Manosphere, Magtow, Taylor the Fiend, and the modern day women need to factor in what it was that caused this cultural shift, when it happened, and what led up to it. It's economical. because the women had to come out of the house and work to keep up with the American dream that was no longer in existence. Your children were affected. And the girls were not raised like women. Mom didn't have time to teach their daughters how to cook and be a lady and this and that and the other thing. Now, this is no excuse to you ladies, but it is a factor to look at. But you got to understand what happened to us men, too. The capitalist system wasn't offering good paying jobs like they did to my grandfathers and my dad, to where they can afford. Let me tell you this. My mom stopped working as a police officer from the time I was born till the time I started kindergarten. In that time, my dad could sustain us. We had a house, the bills were paid, the kitchen was overflowing with food. We went to school, had a good education. And there were 5 of us. We had my dad's truck that he drove, and while he was an owner operator, then he became a Teamster trucker, but that's beside the point. He had a van, a Ford F-150 pickup truck, a Thunderbird, a 1979 Thunderbird, with the big taillights, had the bird shape on it. We had 2 of those, by the way, and we had 2 snowmobiles. One seat was longer. You could fit like 4 people on that snowmobile, and one you can only fit 2 people on. You had, in the area I lived in, way south of Chicago, we were glad to have those, because in 1978, the only way to get around was by snowmobile. They didn't have, plows couldn't make it into where we were. And it was good because a lot of people had an IGA grocery store 4 miles away that lived on top of the grocery store. And they said, you make it here, we'll open the door, you can shop, and blah, blah, blah. And we did this, and we tied sleds off to the rear end of this to go and shop for everybody that could not make it out of their own house. The only way out of your house where we lived at that time was out through the upstairs window. We laugh about it to this day because it hasn't happened since, unless you live way up in the Arctic Circle. But we haven't had a storm like that. With the exception of Buffalo, New York. They got bombed a few days ago. They got 3 feet of snow. But I'm trying not to get off track here. But see how the issue branches off to things that are tied together. My dad was able to do all this stuff on one income. You couldn't possibly do that today. Why? Because wages stopped rising, and a lot of the good paying jobs from 1980 and thereon went en masse over to other countries for cheap foreign labor. That's why we're having a collapse of our economy. It's starting to come to a head. The union leaders were screaming about this, but nobody wanted to listen because why? It wasn't affecting them directly. Doesn't get attention, and people don't care or want to hear it until it affects them directly. Me, I'm at the point where I don't want it to affect me directly, but I want to help fix this situation and the people around me and the town that I live in, because this sort of thing happens unevenly. It hasn't quite reached my town yet, but it will. It eventually will. And plus, I'm thinking about what kind of future are we leaving behind for my kids? Not only just my kids thinking selfishly, but everybody else's kids too. Because a lot of the kids that my kids go to school with, they're good kids too. Some of them have divorced parents. I understand that. I don't want to get into that. But they're still good kids. Some of them looked up to me as like a father figure. That's why a lot of them back in the day, you used to call me by my road name, Big Sexy. And then they abbreviated it, just called me, Uncle BS, which is a lot more funnier. I like that one. So a lot of them call me Uncle BS, but I'm like a father figure to them. And I'm like, if I wasn't around, I hope that there's some father figure there to lead my kids in a good direction too. So when I'm around, I take that mantle. When I take my kids to go ice cream, they got their friends. I'm like, no, bring your friends along too. I'll buy them ice cream. And I talk with their friends and get to know them too. And a lot of the school staff that they go to work with, that they go to school with, some of the school staff did not like me. But all the kids that knew me did. It's because you got one life to live, and my dad raised me, do it right the first time or don't do it at all. And I'm like, I'm forced into taking this responsibility. So I'm not going to break and traumatize this child saying, you're not my kid, go home now. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to treat them as if they were my own children. Like, no, no, bring your friends. We can have ice cream, go to Kings Island, this, blah, blah, blah. You know, plus it's fun. Because not all parents, and I don't hold this against them, they can't afford to take their kids to a nice thing like that, to an amusement park. It's very expensive, especially if you don't have a season pass. Yes, those are expensive. However, they're a lot cheaper if you go a lot, which my kids do. My oldest daughter works at Kings Island, has for 2 years. Next year, she's there right now. After Thanksgiving, they open for Winterfest. After the first of the year, she comes home, and then when they open up in April, she's probably going to be a ride supervisor next year. It was an unintended consequence that she was worried about dad because, yeah, I want her to go to college. That's the responsible thing to do. However, she's doing something that she really likes. And I'm like, you're going to move up? I'm like, okay, honey, I support you to do this. Okay. But I still want you to go to college. And I said, if you want, instead of going to the medical field like your mom, take a business course and you go up the ladder at Kings Island because I know you love what you do and I support you. I mean, I was practically born in the kitchen of that place. I mean, I worked there once during the what they call Fear Fest, when Paramount Pictures owned that amusement park. And I just did it because I enjoyed it. I love the park, and they paid me. And I was doing it on weekends. It didn't affect my 40-hour job at that time. I went over there on weekends, had a ball, and got paid for it. I was Jason Voorhees. It wasn't my decision. They did it. They took one look at me. Oh, you're just definitely Jason Voorhees because I'm a big man. And that's how I got my season passes every year. Bought my kids season passes every year until my job was able to sustain that and I could afford to do that. But that's the question, and ladies have every right to understand that. It's not gold digging. It's like this. A woman wants a man that, if you want a traditional woman, you have to sustain the family. Can you do this to get a traditional woman? But I gotta say, yes, in this day and age and culture, it's hard to find a traditional woman. Granted, yes, it is. But by some miracle, you can find one, and some of you ladies can actually make that recultural shift back to what women used to be. And you can learn from women in your Asian countries, like, let's pick one, like the Philippines, not so much Korea. Why not Korea? Korea is a Western country. It's more, Southern Korea, it's more westernized. They have their issues. They're a little bit, some of them are a little bit different than what we have here. Crap. Rattling off so much, I missed my turn back there. But oh well, I can go down to the next day because it gets turned around. But it's something to think about. Taylor the Fiend, Magtow, Manosphere, your guys' channel. I hope that this grabbed your attention and you took this time to spend 44 minutes with me and 49 seconds for me to discuss this. I'm not taking sides and I'm not defending anybody. I'm broadening what you guys information that you guys are talking about, and this would really help. Then, if there's any victim in all this, it would be everybody. The non-victims, your boards of directors and major shareholders, your one top 10 to 1% in this country. The 99% like us, yeah, we're the victims of this. Why? Because it's our economical system that needs to die, which it is dying. There's nowhere to grow here. Because I like my European friends saying, we can do better than capitalism. Like every other economic system that came before it, feudalism, slavery, primitive tribalism, you name them, are born, evolve over time, and die. Capitalism, no exception. Born 17th century England, moved into Europe, mainland Europe, came to the world's economy for the most part, evolved over time. And you can look around, especially if you're an American, you can look around and see the system's dead. Yeah, it is. But the rich elite want to hang on to this system for as long as they can. Just like when empires die, like Rome, England, the Dutch, they tried to hang on to it as long as can. And who pays the price for that downcline? All of us, not them. And they're not necessarily affected by it either. That's why they grab the wealth and hold on to it, put it in overseas and foreign banking accounts where it can't be tracked anymore. And you go to the Bureau of Economic Research and you find out when our lovely little system is over. They say, I've been saying this for over the past 25 years, 2030 and it's over. Me, I think it's going to happen a little bit sooner than 2030. Jesse, you got to take that argument, and I told at the beginning, put that to the side. I took all of them foolish arguments. Not all women wanted their independence. Not all women fought for that. I'd say the majority of the women weren't about that. Like I said, in 1980, the millions of women came out of the house to keep up with the American dream, but it wasn't enough. So they borrowed by getting credit cards. That's when credit cards were issued en masse. We borrowed up the wazoo to keep up with the American dream. But I need you to understand something, Jesse. With what money you make, do you think that when you were in your 20s and 30s, the money you made was able to sustain a family? Just you. You got to answer that honestly. Me, I can do it, yes. But that means I'm going to be home a lot less. I sacrifice my home time to make as much money out here as I can to make sure that my children have every advantage available. That's the way I was raised. But it can't be done unless you are in the top 10% of men in this country. There are some men that make 6 figures a year, have 4 or 5 kids, and still can't do it on their own. My children's mother, great mother. She went to college, got in the medical field, made great money. And she still came home and tried to do the motherly things. Keeping the house clean, doing the dishes, making sure the kids are fed, blah, blah, blah. However, over time, she can't do all that on her own and still nail down a 40 to 50-hour good-paying job. She's done it. Not easily, but has done it. But I learned that I can do it from the time Cheyenne was born until she entered kindergarten. I was able to do it. But I was home a lot less. Now, don't get me wrong. Yes, there was a lot of women that wanted their independence. Yeah, the mass illegal migration. Okay, let's put that baby to rest right away. Go to the National Bureau of Labor Statistics in DC. They got a website, go to it. They say anywhere between 12 to 15 million illegals are in the United States. Okay, let's just say it's 15. I give them the maximum amount of the number that they provided. Out of 340 million Americans, do you think that 15 million is going to crash our economy and destroy it? Uh, no. That's poor arithmetic. That's what you call scapegoating. And I was just out west and got this load in Washington State. Some of them probably were illegals. Do you think I'm going to argue that point? No. I like these people. They treat me with respect. I treat them with respect. I speak Spanish to them. They're good people, hardworking people, just like our ancestry, our parents, our grandparents that lived in this country. They're trying to make what they call narasa or onda. Your onda is not the same as their onda. Okay? These people work very hard and they get paid much less because they're illegal. They don't have to pay these people minimum wage. They don't have to pay them at all. Who are they going to complain to? They go to complain to some authority and they get deported. But I have to hand it to the farmers. They don't do that. They pay them something, not a lot. But, Don, just to give you an idea, most majority of our fruits and vegetables that come back east, which I have on the back of my truck, you're able to get the bag of apples, which I have, for like $5.99 at the grocery store because those illegals pick it. Unless you can find some self-picking fruit, they would really like to hear it. Okay? So you get rid of all these illegals. Who's going to pick the fruit? Oh, you're going to have to hire Americans. Yeah, they're going to have to pay a minimum wage. Do you think those farmers are going to swallow that cost? Think about that for a minute as a business standpoint. I know I don't want to because I'm a business owner. I don't want to swallow that cost. So who am I going to dump it on? The consumer. You send all these illegals back. Good luck when you go to the grocery store and you're wondering why a bag of apples is $20 or $30. Yeah, you want to talk about inflation. That's why I never wanted to rock that boat. I'm telling you, they get rid of the illegals out there that are picking our fruits and veggies, and some are in Florida, some are in parts of the country, and they got to pay more. The farmers got to pay more, and you get rid of these people. Fine. Look forward to spending a whole lot more for fruits and vegetables. You got to understand, get the whole story instead of just being led into something that makes you feel good, like tariffs. Oh, we're going to hit them Chinese. We're going to really suck it to the man. No, you're not going to do anything to the Chinese. They got the BYD, the best electronic vehicle in the world. They won. It's better than the Tesla, and it's a lot cheaper than the Tesla. $30,000. You bring it here to the United States, we slapped $100% tariff on it, so it's going to cost you 60, right? You think that it's the Chinese that going to pay the 100% tariff? No. If you want to buy that Chinese are going to get their 30 grand for the car. They're out of it. But that extra 30 for the tariff, you pay Uncle Sam for. So it's really not sticking it to the Chinese. And what does that do? That makes some people like Nikola Tesla to come back like he's all American and everything else to really make you feel good inside that he did something to help them do something American so he can sell his Teslas that aren't worth a shit for 50 here in America. So you're going to pay 50 grand for a substandard car that's not as good as the BYD. Who does that affect? Not the Chinese. It affects us. You want that quality electrical vehicle, you're going to have to give Uncle Sam 100% tariff. It's not sticking it to the Chinese. It's not sticking it to anybody. It's sticking it to us. The BYD electric car, you'll find them all over Europe. Look it up, Don. You'll find them all over Europe. Why? Because it's a good car. Its cognitive obsolescence is great. The battery life lasts better than the Teslas. But just to let you know, it wasn't the Chinese that came over to the United States and made Apple to make their iPhones over in China. No, Steve Jobs decided that. It wasn't the Chinese government that came to our government and made them let them buy 2/3 of our debt. No, it was our own government that decided that, to borrow. It's kind of funny. Did anybody put this together? To help our government, capitalistic government, went to the communist Chinese government to help the capitalists in their travail. Did you think about that for a moment? That's why we owe the Chinese so much money, but they're not going to let us borrow limitlessly. That's why they're starting to retract it, because they don't want it devalued. We asked the socialist government, Chinese government, that everybody calls communist, which they don't know what you're talking about when you use that word. And when you use the word communist, you don't know what you're talking about to begin with, because communism is not a governmental system, it's an economical one. If I had time, I'll go take you through that to make you understand that it's an economic system. When people use communism, they really mean authoritarianism. That is a governmental system. Communism is not. Well, at least according to what Marx wrote. You know, when Marx wrote Das Kapital in 1864, communism didn't exist. But how many people are going to pick up Das Kapital and read all 3 volumes? Nobody. Unless you're dedicated. Now, I got respect for you. And I'm telling you, the Chinese are far more humanistic than our government is. Okay? Here's why. The Chinese, send like 3 men in nice suits into countries in Africa and South America and different countries. And they go to their governments and they say, you need some ports, and you need some roads and modern day telecommunications and internet. And we'll do all this for free. We'll do all it for free. Of course they're buying influence. Like they did over in Ethiopia when they found all the oil over there. How do we do that? We don't send 3 people in suits to talk to their government nicely and say, you need this, you need that, and do it all for free. No. The United States government, what do? We send our military in with planes, bullets, bombs, and guns, and ships, and everything else, and blow the tits off their country to rob their resources. Now, this is my country that I'm talking about. It's not my country. It's who we're being led by. They're making those decisions. I'd rather do what the Chinese do instead of killing people. I'm not defending the Chinese all the way, but I'm defending them to a point that this is what they do and this is what we do to other countries. However, your media will not tell you, spoon feed you this. It's good to have friends in a lot of different countries to get the real story or the whole story, instead of what the media has been paid off to say. Like Rupert Murdoch owning a lot of networks that you know of. Fox is one of them. He strictly hires and fires people and hires them and pays them to say what he wants them to say. Yes, this is what happened in the news. You omit that. You don't get that. In Every news production, there's editors, and what do? They edit out what they don't want said or shown. That's why you're not getting the whole story. You're getting a painted picture and getting what they want you to know and hear. Not the whole story, and maybe some of it is a slide of bullshit that will lead you into what you believe right now. That's why I shut the media off long ago. When they lied to us about 9/11, I was done. They duped us big time. And I knew about the Middle East and a lot of its culture. It's leading me to this. How I know they were full of BS when it was Dick Cheney. He's got one foot in the banana peel and one in the grave right now. Dick Cheney's going to have to live out the rest of his life. How much of it is left? Came on the news and said that Saddam Hussein gave Osama bin Laden safe haven to protect him. I knew that was a lie, because if it had been true, Saddam Hussein would have told, or Osama bin Laden would have told Saddam Hussein to go fuck himself. Because you people en masse and in the West do not know about the culture in the Middle East. Yes, they're both Muslims. Yes. But you need to understand, just like Christianity, there are different sects of that religion. Like here, we got Christianity, you got Catholics, you got Baptists, you got Seventh-day Adventists, you got Episcopalian, you got Pentecostal, whole bunch of different types, branches of Christianity. Well, you got the same thing with the Muslim faith. Saddam Hussein was a Sunni, and bin Laden was a Shia. They don't like each other, never have, never will. That's why I knew that was a lie. And they know the mass of American people don't know this, so they're going to prey upon that, because you people are like sheep. Try to bring in the grand picture. I'm sorry I got off on that tangent about that, but it's trying to deliver to everybody to get a full understanding of why this is that way, why women are acting that way. This will help understand what started it, how did we get here. And I'm ending this live stream because I'm at this choke and puke. I'm going to take a 10-100, and then I'm going to get some juice, and I'm going to come back in here and drive my truck. I missed my turn back there. I got to get turned around. But I'm glad I could share this with you guys. And, hey, if you see me on a live stream and want to talk about it, hey, make a live stream. We'll talk about it. I have nothing against any of you guys. Nobody's my enemy here. It's to educate. You can learn as much from me as I could probably learn from you, just to let you know. You guys have a good day.